Chief Justice, welcome to 7:30 South Australia.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for inviting me.
Is the internet undermining the integrity of suppression orders?
I think there's a danger it will. So far, the enforcement of suppression orders has rested on the fact that the traditional media, first of all, behave pretty responsibly, but secondly, they know if they breach the rules, they can be punished.
Yet we see other people who breach the rules not being punished.
Yes.
It sounds like a question of self-interest.
Yeah,
The traditional media jump through hoops, but others don't.
Yes. And the thing is, the other people, the people who are using the various electronic media, there are just so many of them and they're spread so far and wide that it would not be practical to prosecute all of them. And I guess the difficulty for the prosecuting authorities is which ones do you pick out to prosecute? And I suppose inevitably they'll then say, well, I'm the sacrificial lamb. So there is a problem, there's no doubt about that.
Does there, in your view, need to be a prosecution to send a message to people using the internet that this is serious and it is taken seriously?
Well, it is serious. We can argue a lot about the policy of the law and whether courts always get it right. But I think everyone will agree there'll be some cases where the victim, alleged victim, does need to be protected. There'll be some cases where the prosecution want their investigation protected. There'll be some cases where a witness needs to be protected. So the difficulty is, are we going to abandon all forms of protection because we can't prosecute? So there is a serious issue there.
But presumably we can prosecute, and there'd be examples on the internet where people are quite identifiable. Should they, in your view, be prosecuted?
Well, I think it's a very difficult question because I'm not sure what effect it would have if just a few were prosecuted. It may well be that the people who are doing it would just get a bit smarter, they would conceal their identities, and still there would be so many of them on such a wide basis that you couldn't enforce the laws.
Can you think of a way to stop suppression orders being broken on the internet?
No, I can't. I think it's impossible. One might say, well, why don't we make the penalty 20 years imprisonment? Why don't we prosecute a few people? And when people see it's really serious, they'll stop. The answer is I don't think society would accept, and I don't think Parliament would accept that kind of punishment. And I think whatever you do, there'll be people in places you can't reach. They'll be in other countries. By the time you reach them, with some of them even in South Australia, the damage is done anyhow. And unless the way you treat them scares everyone else off, what you achieve, you stop that person, but there's 100 others who step into the breach.
Can you explain why suppression orders are important?
Well, certainly people tend to see them as protecting the accused, but quite often they'll be there, first of all, to protect an alleged victim. Particularly with sexual offences, the victim, you could understand, would not want to give intimate detail about the offence and then have their identity broadcast. Sometimes it'll be to protect a child or a vulnerable witness. As I said, sometimes it's sometimes it's the prosecution who ask for the suppression order to protect the integrity of their investigation. So I don't know numerically how many suppression orders are made to protect the identity of the accused person, but I would think probably they wouldn't be the majority even. They might be a substantial minority, but not the majority. That would be my expectation. So there are other interests being protected.
So the review that's going on, should it cover more than just 71A? This was the review that the Premier announced the other day.
Yes, I think it needs to, because I don't think you can see 71A in isolation. 71A is the decision by Parliament, no names published. 69A is the one that gives the court power to make orders. I think you have to look at them together. But the other thing I think they need to do is look at what's happening in, say, America, Canada and England, because it may well be that we've got to the point where we can't enforce the system anymore, and it would be interesting to know what is happening in similar societies. And so if, say, in America you find, let's just assume, I don't know, you find they have virtually no suppression orders at all, but the system still copes, you might say, well, we might as well go the American way.
Would you feel comfortable with that, with no suppression orders whatsoever?
I don't personally have a very strong view about it, but I don't know how it's working in other countries. What I do accept is there'll be some situations in which, if you cannot have a suppression order, a prosecution will fail, either because a crucial witness won't give evidence, because the victim won't be willing to give evidence, or because the publicity about the case will be so intense and unfair that the accused can't get a fair trial. Well, so if I just add, there is a price. In other words, if we have no protection by suppression orders, we may find there'll be cases where the prosecution, for one reason or another, can't proceed, and that's not good either.
Well, are we close to that point anyway, in your view, with what's happening on the internet?
Not yet, but I think things are moving pretty fast, and we could get to the point where people could reasonably say, what is the point of a suppression order if all over the internet the person is being named and vilified?
And the full interview with John Doyle is available now on our website.